Good evening. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. What shall we do? Shall we wait for some more minutes until others join?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so then I can remember there are nearly 25, 30 students. But shall we start?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you okay? So then, hope you all can remember last week we started this topic, language acquisition and learning. Can you remember?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, language acquisition and learning. We will just remind what we did. Okay. So at the very beginning of the lesson, we got to know language acquisition is a kind of unconscious process. That means when we are acquiring a language, we are not aware that we are acquiring it. So that happens without our knowledge. You just imagine how we acquire our mother tongue. So when we were very small, we don't know whether we are acquiring a language, but we have acquired it. Okay, so then we talk about something called critical period. Okay, so that is a concept. which was dominating in the field of education, linguistics, for a long time. So according to this concept, critical period, the linguist believed that there is a particular period of time when a person can acquire a language. When that period is over, it is very tough for a person to acquire a language. Okay, so that is the normal idea of society. Okay, so you can, Umesha, you can switch off your microphone. I think it is Umesha. So we can hear what you are talking. Umesha 37, that is the only microphone which is on apart from Umesha. I can't even mute because I'm anybody who knows Umesha? Okay. I don't know whether she was removed from the anyway. A critical period. That is what we were talking actually. So during this time, children can effortlessly absorb the complexities of language, including grammar, pronunciation, and vocabulary. So during this critical period, the learners can absorb complexities of language. That means including grammar, pronunciation, and vocabulary. Think about mother tongue, not the second language. So without our knowledge, we acquire complex things in language, just like grammar. Without our knowledge, that is acquisition. Then we were talking about holistic approach. Language acquisition involves holistic understanding of language. Okay, so then when it comes to language acquisition, the children learn different aspects of language. I will give you one example. So when we are learning a language in the classroom setting, we are paying more attention to certain parts only. For an example, grammar. See how English language is taught in Sri Lanka. That is just writing and grammar. And those who are teaching it, they do not pay much attention to listening and speaking. But that is not the way we acquired our first language. We acquired listening, speaking, reading, writing, all the areas of language. Okay, so that is why we say when it comes to language acquiring, it is holistic. That means it's a whole thing actually, not part of it. But when we are learning a language, it may be a part of language. Sometimes we will not get the chance to listen. We will not get the chance to talk. But when we are acquiring a language, it is a holistic approach. Okay, that way, if you are not clear, you can just put a message or you can talk. Okay, then we discuss about language learning. Language learning is a conscious process. We know we are learning a language. And most probably, language learning occurs in a classroom setting. Teacher is there, teacher is giving students instruction, textbooks are there. In this modern world, there are different apps for learning language. Basically, they will be focusing more on grammar rules, vocabulary, and sentence structures. Okay. Then when we are learning a language, we focus on specific skills. That means it's not a holistic approach like in language acquiring. For an example, when we are learning English language, we focus more on grammar and vocabulary. So, unlike language acquiring, language learning can occur at any age. Okay, so even a very old person can learn a language. Okay, I can remember we talked about this, the differences between language acquisition and language learning. Language acquisition is unconscious, learning is conscious. Like for language acquisition, there is something called critical period. But language learning, it's not like that. At any time, any age, we can learn a language. Approach towards language acquisition, it is holistic. But when it comes to language learning, it focuses on specific skills. Is it clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so then we talked about the interplay between acquisition and learning. Okay, just remind what we were doing. Okay. Okay. So interplay between acquisition and learning. Okay, so then actually, when we think of a language, we can't say we are acquiring a particular language only, or we are learning a particular language only. So normally it's a mixture of them. Part of a language we acquire, part of the language we learn. Okay, so even think about your mother tongue. You acquired it, but when you go to school, in classroom setting, you learned it. Okay, that is the idea. Uh, did we start this? I'm asking you, I can't remember actually. Did we start this? Yes. Make me aware whether we did this last week.
Yes, madam.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Yes or no? Yes,
Yes.
or no? Just put a message to the chat box.
yes, madam.
We did it. Hari, okay, Hari. Behaviorism is a theory of learning that states all behaviors are learned through conditioned interaction with the environment. So behaviorism is a language theory actually. It's a very famous theory. It says behaviors are learned through conditioned interaction with the environment. So when we interact with the environment, we learn behavior. The behaviorist theory is only concerned with observable stimulus response behavior as they can be studied in systematic and observable manner. Okay, under behaviorism, we are just checking observable behavior. But there are language behavior which cannot be observed. So they are happening there in the brain. But theory of behaviorism pays attention only to observable behavior. We'll go further. Okay, focus on observable behavior, learning through conditioning. And then we got to know the key figure, B.F. Skinner. Then we were talking about stimulus response. The principle suggests that external stimuli trigger out reaction. Imagine a bell ringing before you get food. Then reinforcement. Audiolingual method did we do?
Yes, madam.
Yes, okay. And then we'll go to cognitivism. Did we start?
No, madam.
Okay, now we came to the point. So we'll start here. So we have done one theory which is about language learning and acquisition, that is behaviorism. So now we are going to start the second theory, that is cognitivism. Okay, read. I am waiting until you finish reading. If you finish reading, let me know.
Okay, madam.
Okay. So what is this cognitivism? So cognition, metacognition. So whenever you see the term cognition, remember it's related to brain. The learning theory of cognitivism concentrates on how a person's mind receives, organizes, saves, and retrieves information. So, cognitivism is a theory which talks about how a person receives information, how she organizes them, how she saves them in the brain, and how she use it when and where it necessary. Okay. The cognitive theory believes that the human mind functions like an information processor or computer. Therefore, the cognitivist approach looks beyond noticeable behavior, considering learning as an internal mental process. Okay, so under cognitivism, the behavior cannot be observed because that is happening in the brain. But under behaviorism, it focuses on observable behavior only. Okay, we'll go to the next page. Yes, read.
Okay, madam.
Okay, so here you can see Jean Piaget is the pioneer of cognitivism. He is the one who came up with this theory. Okay, but later another person called Vygotsky, he also contributed a lot for them. Okay. Piaget proposed that learners actively construct their understanding of the world through stages of cognitive development. He emphasized the importance of schemas, mental framework for organizing knowledge. Okay, so that is what he came up with. So, through the stages of cognitive development, people construct knowledge. So then how a small child construct knowledge is different from how an adult construct knowledge. Okay. So Vygotsky introduced the concept of zone of proximal development. That is a technical term. Don't worry about it. That is how Vygotsky named it. Zone of proximal development. This is the gap between what a learner can do independently and what they can achieve with guidance or collaboration. If somebody asks you what is zone of proximal development, you can say that is the gap between what a person can do individually and what a person can do with the support of others. Okay, we'll go to the next slide.
Okay, madam.
Yeah. Schema. We learn by fitting new information into existing mental frameworks. If something doesn't fit, we modify our schema to accommodate the new information. Okay, so when we get a new information, we send that information to the brain and then it is saved on the existing information. Okay, if something does, so then if the received information fits, it will go and deposit in the brain. But if does not fit, we modify our schemas to accommodate the new information. We create another apartment to create to save this new information. Okay? So then constructivism. Learners actively construct their understanding of the world through experiences and interactions. They are not passive recipient of information. Okay, constructivism, it's also a theory. It says learners are constructing knowledge on the existing knowledge. Okay, otherwise they are not just passive recipient of the knowledge. So they are not just listening to teachers and getting what they are telling, but they construct knowledge on the existing knowledge. I don't know, I told you early. Before constructivism, there was a theory called positivism. So under positivism, it is said that it is considered that learners' heads are empty vessels. What teachers are doing is filling these empty vessels with knowledge that they have. But constructivism is against the idea. They say when children go to school, grade 1, they are not empty vessels. There's something in their mind. Okay, so they construct knowledge on the existing knowledge. So that is constructivism. Yeah, read this also. Okay, zone of proximal development. Learning happens most effectively within the zone of proximal development. So this is the range of challenges slightly beyond learners' independent capabilities, but achievable with support. Okay, so here it is about what a learner can achieve beyond what they normally can achieve. And that may be with the support of available resources, maybe teacher. So think about yourself. Imagine something that you can do individually. Imagine someone else is helping you for that. Okay. So you are learning it better. And that gap is called zone of proximal development. Okay, now we are moving to application of cognitivism. Read it.
Okay, madam.
So then to apply cognitivism, there is a teaching method. And that method is called task-based learning, TBL. Okay, so then just like audio-lingual method is the best method to teach, what is that theory? Behaviorism. But under cognitivism, the selected theory is task-based learning. Focus on meaningful tasks. TBL emphasizes tasks that require learners to use language for real-world purposes. This helps them build schemas for using the language in different ways. Task-based learning emphasizes tasks that require learners to use language for real-world purposes. Okay, so under task-based learning, learners are required to use language for real-world purposes. So the way that they learn language, we are going to learn language in a way that it helps them build schemas for using the language in different contexts. Okay, so then normally when learners are learning a language, they have to learn it in a natural way. Okay, so but when language is learned under the concept of behaviorism, it's not natural. But when they learn language under the theory of cognitivism using task-based learning, language learning appears very natural. Okay, so active construction of knowledge instead of rote memorization. Under audiolingual method, learners are supposed to memorize what they learned. But under task-based learning, learners are encouraged to actively use their existing knowledge and skills to complete tasks. Okay, so then rote learning, memorization is not encouraging task-based learning. Instead of they perform tasks. This strengthens their understanding and promotes schema development. Okay, this strengthens their understanding and promotes schema development. Okay, so then when they construct knowledge actively, it strengthens their understanding. They understand better. Okay. Yeah, see this also.
Okay, madam.
Oh. Learning within the SPD. Task-based learning tasks are designed to be challenging but achievable with support. Okay, teachers can provide scaffolding. Scaffolding means guidance, prompts, feedback to help learners complete tasks within their SPD, promoting growth. Okay, so then you know SPD, that is the gap between what an individual do independently and what he can do with the support. Okay, so under task-based learning, teachers are supporting learners. Learners are not idling. Teachers are behind them to support them. So, teachers are providing guidance. Teachers are providing them prompts, feedback. So, learners will complete the task very successfully. And then collaboration and interaction. TBL often involves collaboration, allowing learners to learn from each other and negotiate meaning with the ZPD. This fosters social learning and the development of shared skills. But simply understand, so task-based learning involve collaboration. Collaboration means කට්ටිය එකට වැඩ කරනවා කියන එක, සහයෝගය. So this factor fosters social learning. So task-based learning is a kind of social learning. But under audiolingual method, the student was learning all alone. But under cognitivism and under task-based learning, learners are not helpless. Learners are learning together. So that is task-based learning. Okay, see this.
Okay, madam.
Benefits of task-based learning. It increased motivation. Engaging tasks can make learners more motivating and enjoyable for students. Okay, rather than writing notes, listening to the teacher when they are given tasks, they may be somewhat motivated and they may enjoy. Then improved communication skill. By using language for real-world purposes, learners develop fluency and accuracy in spoken and written communication. Okay, so then when learners learn under task-based learning, their communication skills improves a lot. Okay, so they develop fluency and accuracy. So under audiolingual method, learners are not fluent. They can't talk properly. But under task-based learning, it's not like that. Deeper understanding of language. TBL encourages learners to think critically about language and how it functions in various contexts. Okay, task-based learning encourages learners to think critically. Okay, because under audiolingual method, which is there under behaviorism, learners were not having freedom to think critically. They were just imitating the teacher. Okay, but here learners are having a chance to think critically about language and how it functions in various contexts. So they are advantages. Okay, so then these are huge theories, but I simply gave you an idea. So now we'll go to the next theory. Okay. Did
Okay,
you
madam.
read this?
Yeah, ma'am.
Hi. So then we have learned by now two theories. One is behaviorism, other one is cognitivism. Okay, under behaviorism, we learned about audiolingual method. Under cognitivism, we learned about task-based learning. Okay, now we are moving to another theory, which is also about language learning and acquiring. That is socio-cultural theory. The socio-cultural theory focuses on the role social interaction and culture play in the development of higher order thinking skills. Okay, so in the process of acquiring or learning a language, what a role is played by society and culture. So that is the simple idea. So key principles of socio-cultural theory. There are some main principles there. Number one is social interaction. And this is also presented by Vygotsky. Vygotsky believed that learning happens primarily through social interactions with more knowledgeable others. Okay, MKO, MOKO. That means more knowledgeable others. So when you interact with more knowledgeable others, your language gets improved. Then learning occurs. In the zone of proximal development, the more knowledge others could be a teacher, a more skilled peer, or anyone who can provide support and guidance. Okay, so that's why normally we say when you learn with a person, better to select a person who is more knowledgeable than you, at least who is equal knowledgeable to you. Okay, so when you are learning with a more knowledgeable other, so you can improve. Could be a teacher, this more knowledgeable others can be a teacher, maybe your own friend, or anyone who can provide support and guidance. Maybe your relatives. Okay, read this.
Okay, madam.
And okay, zone of proximal development. This concept refers to the gap between what a learner can do independently, you know this already, and what they can achieve with help. Learning happens most effectively within ZPD, where the learner receives scaffolding to bridge the gap. Scaffolding means support, help from someone else. Okay, we'll see a scaffolding. This refers to the temporary support provided by the more knowledge other to help the learner complete tasks that is beyond their current independent abilities. Don't get afraid of these things. These are very simple things. Think about yourself. So there are certain things when you do individually, your achievement level will be little bit low. But with the support of your teacher, maybe with the support of your friend, you can achieve something more than what you achieved early. That is called scaffolding. Scaffolding can take various forms such as prompts, explanation, modeling, or feedback. Next one. Yes, internalization. As learners successfully complete tasks with scaffolding, they gradually internalize the knowledge and skills, eventually performing something independently. Scaffolding, learners, they don't want it forever. The teachers need to support them temporarily. අපි පොඩි කාලයයි ළමයෙකුට උදව් කරන්න ඕනේ. So after that, they will get it internalized. So at the end, they can perform individually. Okay, so while they need this support, we have to give them. It's not the support forever, temporary one. Okay. Now we will pay our attention to, if you have a doubt, you can put a message. So then, how can we apply this theory? What is that? Socio-cultural theory in classroom setting. There is a method for that. That is called collaborative learning. Okay, just read. Yeah, I'm waiting until you finish reading.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Application of socio-cultural theory. For that, we are using collaborative learning. Collaborative learning is a powerful strategy based on the principles of socio-cultural theory. So then here, group work and interaction. Collaborative learning encourages learners to work together on tasks, sharing ideas, explanations, and problem-solving strategies. Our theory is socio-cultural theory. When we are living in a society also, we have to collaborate with each other. So we have to share ideas. We have to together solve problems. All these things are happening in the process of education also under collaborative learning. Then peer scaffolding. Now you know what scaffolding, that is supporting. Within groups, learners can act as more knowledge others for each other, providing support and explanations within their ZPD. This promotes peer learning and strengthen understanding. Okay, so peer learning is better. Actually, rather than learning from teachers, students are very comfortable when they learn when they learn with their peers. It should be encouraged actually. Sometimes students may be reluctant to ask questions from a teacher, but when they are discussing it with their friends, they are really comfortable. Okay, so next one.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, a negotiation of meaning. Through discussion and explanations within groups, learners negotiate meaning and clarify their understanding of the language and concepts being explored. Okay, so then negotiation of meaning. So under interactive learning, collaborative learning, there are lots of discussions and explanations. Learners negotiate meaning. So there may be different opinions among learners, but at last they will negotiate and come to a common decision. And then developing social skills. Collaboration fosters communication skills, teamwork, and the ability to explain concepts to others. Okay, so then collaboration, working together. It develops social skills, communication skills, teamwork, and ability to explain concepts. So the children will know since their childhood how to explain certain concepts when they are learning under collaborative learning method. Okay, now we'll see benefits of collaborative learning.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Benefits of collaborative learning. Enhance motivation and engagement. So working together on tasks can be more motivating and engaging than individual work. You know the meaning of enhance, it increases, it improves motivation and engagement. Students' engagement is more, students' motivation is also more because of collaborative learning. And then deeper understanding, explaining concepts to others help learners solidify their own understanding. Solidify means make stronger. Okay, so rather than depending on teachers' explanation, under collaborative learning, when they discuss and understand concepts, their understanding is very strong. And then developing communication skills. Collaboration promotes active listening, negotiation, and clear communication of ideas. Okay, because when they work in groups, they can't be silent. So they have to talk, they have to communicate. At last, their communication skill will improve a lot under collaborative learning. Then cultural exchange. If learners from diverse backgrounds work together, collaborative learning can foster cultural exchange and understanding. So when we are doing group work, so there are Sinhalese students, Muslim students, Tamil students, when they work together, it's just like a cultural exchange. It's nice actually, because we are living in a multicultural society. So that experience is also worth. Okay, now we are moving to another theory. Krashen's input hypothesis, language acquisition through comprehension. So this is also a language learning theory. Yeah, read it. I have already shared this slide with Mr. Richard. I suppose you might have got it. Sumeya, did you receive this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Krashen input hypothesis, language acquisition through comprehension. So then Stephen Krashen is very famous when it comes to language acquisition. Okay. Stephen Krashen's input hypothesis is a prominent theory in second language acquisition. So when it comes to second language acquisition, Stephen Krashen is very remarkable character, and his input hypothesis, his concept consists of many hypotheses, but out of these 5, there are 5 actually. Out of them, input hypothesis is very prominent. It emphasizes the role of comprehensible input, that means language that learners can understand, and the importance of a low affective filter, emotional state in successful language acquisition. Okay, so here you can't understand. We'll understand it further. I will come back here. Okay. So here are the key concepts.
Okay, ma'am.
Hari, okay. So then there are lots of technical terms. Don't get upset. Comprehensible input. So now you are very familiar with working with computers, input, output. You know, when we feed something, we can get a result, output. So this refers to language that is slightly above learners' current level of understanding. Okay, so now you are having a particular knowledge level about English language. Comprehensible input, it refers to language that is slightly above learner's current level. Think about yourself. You are having particular English knowledge. Comprehensible input, it refers to language that is slightly above your knowledge. It provides opportunities for learners to stretch their understanding and acquire new language structures and vocabulary naturally. Okay, so then when you understand that, so it helps you to stretch your understanding and acquire new language structures and vocabulary naturally. So when you try to learn something more than what you already know, it will give you a chance to acquire new language structures and vocabulary naturally. Okay, actually that is what we are doing. So we don't want to have this knowledge always as it is. We want to improve it. We want to go to the next level. Okay, when we are trying for that, there is a metaphorical filter called affective filter. So there's nothing like that. This is something imaginary, just like equator. So what is equator? So normally people believe this globe, the earth can be divided into two halves. And in the center of the world, globe, there is a line. But actually there's no such line. So that is an imaginary one. Affective filter is also like that. Equator in Sinhala we call samakaya. There's no something called samakaya. This metaphorical filter represents a learner's emotional state. Okay, so this filter refers to anxiety, motivation, confidence, all these things. A low affective filter allows learners to be receptive to comprehensible input and acquire language subconsciously. Okay, so when a learner's anxiety is very low, but motivation high, confidence high, it is called a low affective filter. Okay, so anxiety, basically think about anxiety. Okay, so that means the learner's fears, excitement. When it is low, the learners can receive, or learners can allow, so it allows learners to be receptive to comprehensible input. In other words, when this affective filter is low, learners can achieve comprehensible input. That means more knowledge than the existing knowledge subconsciously. Without your knowledge, you can achieve it. Conversely, a high affective filter, that means high anxiety, stress, and lack of confidence can hinder language acquisition. Okay, so language learners should have a low affective filter. That means their anxiety should be low. They should not be excited. Then they can reach the next level of language learning. When this affective filter is very high, it's very difficult to learn or difficult to reach the next level of language. So just think about the filter. So when the filter is very strong, we can't filter the things will not go to the other side. But when it is slow, it will nicely flow. So this is also something like this. Is it clear?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I+1 means what? That is the under the topic comprehensible input.
Yeah. Correct.
Within bracket there is I+1. What does it mean, ma'am?
That yeah, this refers to language that is slightly above learners' current level of understanding. That is a symbol actually. So then I refers to the current level, and then plus something more. It's just
Okay,
a
ma'am.
symbol, and don't worry about it. It's not about some concept, not like that. Is it clear?
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Next. This is almost like the summary. We are coming towards the end. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes. Acquisition and learning distinction. Krashen differentiates between acquisition and learning. Acquisition is a subconscious process similar to how children acquire their first language. You know this already. It is facilitated by exposure to comprehensible input and low affective filter. Okay, so then when it comes to language acquiring, there should be a comprehensible input. Okay, without that input, you can't progress. At the same time, there should be low affective filter. Your anxiety should be very low. If you are afraid of learning a new language, you can't learn it properly. Learning, this is the conscious process of memorizing grammar rules and vocabulary. Okay, so in the classroom setting only we are learning a language. While learning can support acquisition to a certain extent, Krashen emphasizes that acquisition is the key to fluency and natural language use. Even we can accept it. So when we learn a language, it looks a bit artificial. But when we acquire a language, it looks natural. And talking, the communication, the speaking also will be very fluent when we acquire a language rather than when we learn. Okay, let me check what is this. Yeah, that's what I told you. Oh, that's what I told you. You have typed the same thing which I told. Yeah, here I plus C. I refers to the existing knowledge plus something more. Yeah, same thing. Okay. Application of Krashen's theory. There is a approach, the method to apply Krashen's theory. What is that? Yeah, you just read it.
Okay.
Yes. The natural approach. So then just like under behaviorism, we were talking about audiolingual method. And then under cognitivism, we learned about, what is that? Can you remember? So then under different theories, we learned different approaches. The critical approach was there under, what is that? Behaviorism or constructivism, like that. So under Krashen's theory, we have the, we'll come back to those things. I will revise them. Under Krashen's theory, there is a method called the natural approach. The natural approach derived from Krashen's input hypothesis focuses on creating a language learning environment that promotes acquisition. So natural approach, it's really interesting. That means inside the class also we have to promote natural approach. That means suitable language learning environment that promotes acquisition. Okay, so in the past, you know, the teachers, they create very artificial environments for students to talk. Just like teacher will say, okay, you can be the teacher, you can be the students, now do a dialogue. Or you are the doctor, you are the patient, now have a dialogue between them. It looks very artificial. So we have to make the environment very natural. So then students will acquire the language properly, not only learning. Emphasis on comprehensible input. The natural approach prioritizes providing learners with comprehensible input through various material. Okay, this is how the teachers can give them comprehensible input. The teachers can recommend some books, graded readers. It's a very famous series of books actually. Conversations teacher can use inside the class, stories. There are many more different methods that are interesting and relevant to their interest. So if you want to create a natural learning environment inside the classroom, it should be something that students like actually. It should not be something the teacher likes. Now think about the students' interest, and then the students will naturally acquire the language.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, natural approach mean is it refers to environment?
Environment, that is not the normal environment which we say what is around us. The environment of the classroom, environment of the place where the language is learned.
Okay, ma'am.
Is it
Thank
clear?
you. Yes, clear.
Classroom environment, think like that. So then you might have heard in the past, even when we were learning English language, we learned grammar. Okay, the teachers taught us grammar. We had separate books for grammar, but we don't know why we learned them. Because we learned direct, indirect speech, we learned simple present, simple past, past perfect, present perfect. But we don't know, even though we score, we in the sense most of the students, even they score very good marks for language paper, when it comes to speaking in English, they can't. So the reason is they learned grammar and language in an artificial environment. But if you make the learning environment very natural, so students will be very fluent in using the language. Okay, focus on meaningful communication. Activities and tasks promote communication and interaction, allowing learners to use language for real world purposes. Okay, so real world purposes, actually learning a language should be for the real world purposes. So why should we learn English language? That is for us to be able to use it naturally. And you know, most of the teachers, most of the students can do prepared speeches. But when it comes to impromptu speech or when it comes to talking naturally, they go backward. So it should not be the way. So that is why we have to create a very natural environment to learn. So then for an example, even grammar lessons can be taught in a natural way. So if you want to learn, teach them WH questions, you can ask students to go and meet your friends. You go and talk to 5 friends in your class and get the answers for these questions. They can ask names, of course, they know. They can ask how many brothers and sisters you have, where do you live, how do you come to school, when do you go on a trip last, or when did you go on a trip last, okay, like that. So then what are your favorite movies? Okay, so teacher can give those questions to the students, and then teacher can ask students to go to 5 students and ask questions and get answers and present to the class. Okay, so they are learning the grammar lesson WH question in one hand. At the same time, they are learning it through a natural environment. So they will talk to each other and it won't look artificial. So the students will be answering genuinely. Where do you live? I live in a particular place. The students will say, I live in Kurunegala. I live in Anuradhapura. Like that. Okay. So otherwise, teaching WH question is something totally new. It won't work. Low anxiety environment. So that is also important. The natural approach aims to create a relaxed and supportive learning environment that lowers the affective filter and encourage risk taking. The affective filter should be lowered. If it is very high and strong, the things will not come, flow. Okay, so students should feel relaxed and supportive. The teachers also have to play a very nice role, facilitator, not a dictator. The student should be comfortable to ask questions. Encourage mistake. Activities are designed to be engaging and enjoyable rather than stressful. So students, they don't like some activities because they make them so stressful. But here the teacher should select activities which are really enjoying, entertaining. Then students will learn naturally.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Delayed focus on grammar. Explicit grammar instruction is de-emphasized in the natural approach. Okay, so under natural approach, explicit, that means very clear grammar instructions are not encouraged, de-emphasized. So according to natural approach, teachers should not tell grammar instructions clearly. The belief is that learners will naturally acquire grammatical structures through exposure to comprehensible input. Okay, so rather than learning grammar as something very artificial, when they are given chances to use grammar, automatically they will learn. Okay, so then those who learned English language through exposure, they know how to talk grammatically correctly. But when we ask what is passive voice, what is active voice, what is simple past, they don't know. But they use the language in a grammatically accurate way. Okay, that is the most important thing. Grammar explanations can be provided later when learners encounter specific difficulties. Okay, but it doesn't mean that you should not give grammar explanation. They can be given when learners face difficulties. Otherwise, from the beginning of the lesson itself, you need not to give them clear explanation. Let them understand. So instead of giving grammar rules, you can give examples to them so that they can understand it. Okay, so you are giving examples. I think nowadays the textbooks are designed in that way. So when we were schooling, at the beginning of the textbook, the grammar book, the grammar rule was there. But now, first examples are given. At the end only the rule is there. That's correct actually. Okay. There are criticisms of Krashen's input hypothesis. See what it is.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So criticism of Krashen's input hypothesis. There are criticisms regarding everything. The role of output. Some argue that Krashen underestimates the importance of language output because his hypothesis is called input hypothesis. Output means speaking and writing. So they are productive skills. So Krashen's, when he was forming his theory, he ignored language output, which is speaking and writing. So that is one weak point in this theory. That's what people say. Then limited
Excuse me,
scope.
ma'am.
Ah,
Ma'am, why does the term speaking and writing used here under the topic the role of output?
yeah. So then here speaking and writing, that is within brackets because that is to show that refers to language output. Input is actually listening and reading. They are called receptive skills.
Okay, ma'am. Then speaking and writing are output.
Output.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So then this hypothesis, this focuses only on input. Then limited scope. The input hypothesis might be more applicable to earlier stages of language acquisition and may not fully address the need of explicit grammar instruction or focused speaking practice at higher level. Okay, so then Krashen, he says that explicit grammar explanation is not needed. But criticism is that's okay to a certain extent. When children are small, it's okay, small in the sense, to a particular age. But there are very complex grammar. For an example, you just imagine direct, indirect speech, conditional clauses. Okay, so the teachers, they have to explain them. Otherwise, the students will not understand it properly. Even though you give sample, direct, indirect speech, they will not understand. So when it comes to high level of grammar, explicit grammar instructions are needed. That is one criticism, another criticism. Okay. Okay, that is the end of this slides. I have one more thing to show you. Wait. Okay, so then our lesson, what we started, it was language acquisition and learning. First, we discuss the difference between language acquisition. That means what is language acquisition? What is language learning? And we spoke about some important concepts there. And then we focuses more on some theories related to language acquisition and learning. Behaviorism is a famous theory, cognitivism, socio-cultural theory, Krashen's input hypothesis. All these four theories are about language learning and acquisition. So then behaviorism, we learned it. So then with behaviorism, the audio-lingual method is going. And then we came to cognitivism. With that, task-based learning is going. Okay, you have to have short notes on these things. Huh? And then we came to socio-cultural theory. Collaborative learning is going with that. Finally, we came to Krashen's input hypothesis. With that, natural approach is going. Okay, so that is how. That means natural approach is encouraged under Krashen's input hypothesis. Hi, let me make you listen to Krashen. Yeah, wait. Let me check whether I can do it. Yeah, let's wait 1 minute. If I play here, don't know whether you will hear it. Yeah, shall we check?
It's not everywhere in the world. The visual system's the same everywhere.
Can you hear it?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Then it's okay. So this is Krashan. He's nicely explaining language learning and acquisition. Yeah, just see.
I begin my presentation this afternoon by talking about what I think is the most important issue in language education, the most important question, and that is, how do we acquire language? And I'd like to begin this discussion, this presentation, with an outrageous statement. In my opinion, we all acquire language the same way. The reason this is an outrageous thing to say is that these days in
Sorry.
education, we're living in an age of individual variation. We're very concerned about how our students are different, not how our students are the same. Those who've been around in the field for a while remember, about 15, 20 years ago, people were very concerned about something called field-dependent learners and field-independent learners. You give people a certain test and one group gets this treatment, one group gets the other. Then about 15 years ago, it was left side of the brain, right side of the brain. Some people are left hemisphere thinkers, some people are right hemisphere. Then about 10 years ago, cognitive style. The cognitive style of the home culture differs from the cognitive style of the school culture. We have a clash, etc. Well, each of the examples I gave you is probably correct. There is individual variation, and there's quite a bit of it. Nevertheless, there are some things we all do the same. Let me give you some examples. Digestion. We all digest food the same, no significant individual variation. First, you put it in your mouth, then you chew it up, then it goes down your throat, then into your stomach. That's how it's done everywhere. That's how it's done in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa. That's how it's done everywhere in the world. The visual system's the same everywhere. It's always the occipital lobe in the back of the brain. It's never in the side of the brain. It's never in the front of the brain. It's never in the elbow. It's done exactly the same everywhere you go. By the way, I used to use sex as an example of things everyone does the same, but some counterexamples have been pointed out to me recently. Actually, I saw this movie, if you really want to know the truth. Anyway, we don't acquire language the same, and rather than just talk about it, I'd like to show you. I'd like to take just a couple of minutes and give you some sample language lessons. I'll use a language that I'm sure you've heard before, and maybe some of you speak, and you can tell me which of these two very brief lessons you like better. Here's lesson number 1. Wir werden jetzt anfangen, Deutsch zu lernen. Und ich möchte im Voraus sagen, dass nach meiner Meinung Deutsch ist eine sehr schöne Sprache. Und ich hoffe, dass Sie alle sehr viel Erfolg mit Deutsch haben werden. What do you think? Good lesson so far? Do you think if I kept talking to you like that, you'd pick up German? Not very likely. How about if I repeated it? Would that help? Probably not. How about if I said it louder? Would that help? Probably not. How about if I said it and you repeated it back? Again, I don't think that would help. How about if I wrote it out for you and you could see it on your television screen? That wouldn't help either. How about if I wrote it out for you and you copied it down? How about if I wrote it out for you and deleted every 5th word and you tried to guess what the word is? The truth is that none of these things help. None of these things mean anything. And I hope you can see that now. Here's lesson number 2. And for this, you have to watch me carefully. Das ist meine Hand. Verstehen Sie das? Hand? Everyone say, yeah, I can hear you, even though it's a TV audience. Good. Kopf. Das ist mein Kopf. Verstehen Sie Kopf? Ja? Gut. Kopf. Here, I'll draw a picture. Kopf. It's good, yeah? Schön. Kopf. Das ist Mr. Spock, ja? Mr. Spock hat 2 Ohren. Ohren. Verstehen Sie Ohren? Hat 2 Ohren. Okay, Mr. Spock. Ja, ach nein, Entschuldigung. Okay. Augen. Verstehen Sie Augen? Augen. Wie viele Augen? 1, 2, 3 Augen. 3 Augen. Ist das richtig? 3 Augen? Nein. Wir haben nur 3 Augen. Mund. Verstehen Sie Mund? Und dann hier ist eine Zigarette, ja? Nein. Zigaretten sind nicht gut. If you understood lesson number 2, not every word, but more or less, I did everything necessary to teach you German. And now I'm going to share with you the most important thing I have learned about language. Probably the best kept secret in the profession. We acquire language in one way and only one way, when we understand messages. We call this comprehensible input. We acquire language when we understand what people tell us, not how they say it, but what they say, or when we understand what we read. Comprehensible input, in my opinion, has been the last resort of the language teaching profession. We've tried everything else. We've tried grammar teaching, drills and exercises, computers, etc. But the only thing that seems to count is getting messages you understand, comprehensible input. Now, one of the reasons lesson number 2 was better than lesson number 1 is we had Mr. Spock to help us out. So anything that helps make input comprehensible, pictures, knowledge of the world, realia, etc., helps language acquisition. If comprehensible input is true, what we call the input hypothesis is true, other things follow from it. A very important corollary of the input hypothesis is this, and this may come as a bit of a surprise to some of you. Certainly came as a surprise to me. Talking is not practicing. Talking is not practicing. What does this mean? It means if you want to improve your Spanish, it will not help you to speak Spanish out loud in the car as you drive to work in the morning. It will not help you to go to the bathroom, close the door, and speak Spanish to the mirror. I used to think those things help. Now I think they don't. On the other hand, if we were a German class and we could hang together for a couple of weeks, say an hour a day of German, and I could keep the input light and lively, as in the second example, you'd start to acquire German. It would come on its own. And eventually, you'd start to talk. Your speaking ability would emerge gradually. Now, we have a lot of evidence that this is true, and the evidence is in the professional literature, in books, in journal papers, etc. And if you're an insomniac, you're welcome to look at all that. But rather than go through that, I'd like instead to tell you a story that illustrates the same point. I've used this story for a long time, so those who've heard it before, I've been using this for about 15 years, and the reason I stay with it is that it makes the point very well, and I've discovered it's just about a universal experience. What has happened to me has certainly happened to you, and bear in mind, if you've heard it before and you're tired of hearing it, think how I feel. My experience took place in 1974 when I was briefly living in exile from California, working at the City University of New York at Queens College as director of English as a second language. And like everyone else in New York, we lived in a big apartment building. And the apartment next door to it was owned by a Japanese company. And every year there'd be a new family in the apartment. And every year there were the children who couldn't speak English. And there I was, director of English as a second language. I will teach English to these children and brag about it to my friends. So I remember going up to the little girl next door. She was 4 years old. Her name was Itomi. And I didn't know about this material on language acquisition then. Nobody did. And I thought then the way you get people to acquire language is you get them to practice talking. So I tried to get her to talk. I'd say, Itomi, talk to me. Say good morning. Say hi. No response. Well, clearly I decided I've got to make this more concrete. Itomi, say ball. No response. Well, obviously I've got to break it down into its component parts. Let's work on initial consonants. Say ba. Look at my lips. Again, no response. There's a theory going around then that a lot of people still believe that children don't really want to acquire language. You have to kind of force it out of them. So I tried that. I won't give you the ball until you say ball. That didn't work either. No matter what I said, he told me he wouldn't speak. She didn't say anything the first week. She didn't say anything the second week, the first month, the second month, 5 months until she started to speak. Actually, that's not entirely true. Children during this stage do pick up certain expressions from the other children in the neighborhood. It's not real language. They understand approximately what they mean. It's not real language. They have a rough idea what it means. They use it in roughly appropriate situations. Things like leave me alone, get out of here. In fact, one child I knew, the only thing he could say was, I kick your ass, said it everywhere. Wasn't quite sure what it meant. After about 5 months, Itomi started to speak. And several things were interesting about her language. First, it looked a lot like first language acquisition, the same process our children went through. 1 word, 2 words, gradually getting more complicated. Second, it came quickly. By the time Itomi and her family went back to Japan at the end of the year, her English was closing in on the way the other children in the neighborhood were talking. The question is this: what was going on during those 5 months? She was listening. She was picking out comprehensible input. When she started to speak, it was not the beginning of her language acquisition. Let me repeat that. When she started to speak, it was not the beginning of her language acquisition. It was the result of all the comprehensible input she had gotten over those 5 months. Now, a silent period for a child in a situation like this is not pathological. It's normal. It's what you expect. You'd like to have a silent period, wouldn't you? How would it be if you had to study another language, but you went to a class where you didn't have to say anything? Doesn't that sound wonderful? You can talk all you want. You can raise your hand. You can volunteer, but no one's going to call on you. No one's going to put you on the spot. Also, in this perfect class, if the input isn't comprehensible, it's the teacher's fault, not yours. That's how we're doing it now. And the results we're getting aren't a little better than other methods. They're actually much, much better. Before I leave this topic, let me put in a brief commercial message for speaking. I'm not opposed to speaking. I think when students speak, it's fine. But what counts in speaking is not what you say, but what the other person says to you. In other words, when you get involved in conversation, what counts is the input that you can stimulate from other people. So I'm in favor of students speaking, but we have to understand it makes an indirect, a helpful but indirect contribution to language acquisition. I'd like to discuss one more hypothesis before we move on to literacy, and this is a very important one called the affective filter hypothesis. Research in language acquisition.
So I will stop here because we did not talk about affective filter hypothesis. If you like this, I can share you the link so then you can later watch it. Stephen Carson is a very famous person in the field of language, but his English is very clear. I suppose even you might feel the same thing. So even though he is a native English speaker, his language was very clear. Don't you feel like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So we have completed one lesson, that is language learning and acquisition, and we have come to the end. So next day we will start another one. So then I will, meanwhile, we have some more days, but towards the end, we will be going through some past paper questions also. I will collect it from the institute. I will ask them to mail it to me. Then we can discuss. Okay, so then meanwhile, you need to go through everything we did. Better to have short notes. So then towards the end, we can do a revision session also. Okay, then shall we wind up the session?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, then good night.
Night, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, you are welcome.
Yeah.